It seems like the more experience Gus gets with making Atelier games on the Switch, the better the optimization gets and the better the games look. And that's a very good thing for the game we're going to talk about today. The Atelier series has entered a new franchise or series of sorts, moving away from the mystery games and into something new. Coming with quite a few changes to the series formula, here is my review of Atelier Ryza for the Nintendo Switch. This story is about a young girl raised on a farm known as Ryza. Unlike the others on the island who don't really like change and cling very tightly to age-old traditions, Ryza and her friends want to make a name for themselves by going to the mainland and going on grand adventures. A habit that has easily given her the title of a rebellious tomboy by both her parents and the other people on the island. But thanks to that very habit and desire, she meets a traveling alchemist and his partner. Intrigued by the power of alchemy, she dedicates her time to learning the craft and going on small adventures with her friends, not only to advance that craft, but also fulfill her friends' dreams of adventures, as well as assisting investigations that the traveling alchemist has with the ruins around the island. One thing to note about this game's plot is the fact that it's very different from the other Atelier games. The plot takes itself a bit more seriously, from the trials that Ryza and her friends face with how people treat them, to all of the trials that they face when they're actually on their adventures and meet huge monsters. This more serious take on things is a bit of a departure from what the Atelier series is known for, which is more focused around cutesy slice of life story bit rather than huge serious problems. The game has a lot of cutesy slice of life story bits that you can find around town, but it's pretty clear that they are not the focus in this new series. That's not necessarily a terrible thing though. The story may be more serious, but there is also a big focus on character arcs and character progression, especially with Ryza going from a rebellious troublemaker that just wants to shirk her farm duties to what she becomes at the end of the game. When it comes to gameplay, Atelier Ryza is a turn-based RPG with a large focus on combining items through synthesis, but also has some mild tactical and real-time elements thrown into its combat system. Because this is a new generation or series or trilogy or whatever you want to call it for the Atelier franchise, many of the gameplay elements have changed to make the formula a bit different from the Arlen, Dusk, and Mystery trilogies. Now the actual progression style isn't that different. You've still got a hub town with areas around it that you can go through and explore for gathering items and fighting enemies, but the world feels a little more connected this time around. Now I'm not going to say Ryza is open world like Atelier Fyrus was, but you can go through the dungeons around the town, but also the areas that connect them to one another. But that's not all that's changed. The alchemy and combat systems are pretty different as well. Alchemy is still a process of combining items into other items with traits, quality, quantity, and everything else we had before, but the grid is a little bit different. Instead of having just a straight basic list of stuff that needs to go into the recipe, you have a sort of line graph and you can go in different directions. The idea of these different directions are to add different traits and effects to a recipe, but also to link together and create new recipes. A great example of how this works is weapons. You can't go out and buy the tier 2, 3, 4, and ultimate weapons. You gotta make them from the recipes of the base weapons. So when you're not doing that much damage in battle, you have to go into your recipe, select Ryza's base weapon, and find that little jagged node, and work your way over to it so you can create the tier 2 weapon. And now let's get into combat, which is very different from the previous games. Atelier Ryza completely ditches the MP system for skills and incorporates a more real-time and faster-paced battle system. Instead of having MP for each character, you have an AP bar that fills up as everyone deals and takes damage. This AP pool will be used by all party members whenever they want to use skills, but it can also be filled up and used to increase the party's tactics level up to 5 times, increasing everyone's stats as well as the number of hits each attack does, getting you more AP a lot faster the higher you go and build that up. This is a bit of an odd system for the Atelier series, but very efficient when you want to go out and level grind. You don't have to worry about running out of healing items or MP to use healing skills. All you have to do is go into a new battle, build up some AP, and have your healer go at it. Now, as far as the faster pacing goes, that comes down to only controlling one character at a time and the real-time aspect of the combat system. When you're in battle, you only give commands and control one character at a time, though you can swap back and forth between your 3 party members at any time you want with the L and R triggers. The party members you're not controlling will automatically put in commands when their turns come in. Combat is also in real time, so your allies and enemies don't stop when you're going in and trying to select a command. This makes the fact that you're all pulling from the same AP pool pretty tricky. You can easily go into the command list based off of the AP you have now, but by the time you actually select the skill you want to use, another ally might have already used a skill on their own, taking away the points you needed. This can be worked around because your allies can be set to use skills or just use regular attacks, but it's still pretty tricky and timing based when you want to turn that off and on based on what you need to do. When all of this comes together, overall, all of these new system changes with the formula do work pretty well, but the emphasis on alchemy and alchemy levels do get a bit excessive at certain points of the story. In the first half of the game, I never really had to grind out my alchemy level, but in the second half of the game, there are huge gaps in needs very close together. At one point, I had to grind out about 10 alchemy levels all at once, and less than an hour later, I got another main story quest that required almost 20 more levels. Now let's talk about content and length, which is pretty similar to the other games of the series. It took me close to 40 hours before I finished up the game, though I will admit that at least 6 or 7 of those hours were me grinding around with alchemy levels and trying to find items for a specific synthesis that I needed at one point of the story that I just could not find. But if you're better at the series than I am and don't have any problems with that segment, you're probably still going to be spending at least 30 to 35 hours across the game. Now let's dive into presentation, which looks very impressive. When I first started this game in dock mode, I was astounded at how much detail there was and how beautiful the character models looked. Now in handheld mode in the light, there are definitely some small blemishes here and there with jaggies on the environments, but honestly, it still looks gorgeous when you've got it on the go. Performance is pretty good overall as well. I never saw any frame drops in dock mode, and the ones that I saw on handheld mode were very small and very quick. Now let's get into battery life, which shows that they are still improving bit by bit with their newer games. On the original model, Atelier Ryza has a battery range of 2 hours and 48 minutes up to 3 hours and 32 minutes. On the Nintendo Switch Lite, it has a range of 3 hours and 7 minutes up to 4 hours and 51 minutes. And on the V2 or Redbox model, it has a range of 4 hours and 26 minutes up to 5 hours and 58 minutes. Now in conclusion, Atelier Ryza experiments with some new things for the series, from a faster combat system to a more serious story. On the downside, handheld mode has some small blemishes in the frame rate, and the alchemy goals do tend to get a little grind heavy in the second half of the game. But if you're a fan of the series, it's still a good RPG with a lot of stuff for you to do. Reviews to Go rates Atelier Ryza for the Nintendo Switch an 8.5 out of 10. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below. Thanks for watching and have a great day.